Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first in a series of risk advisory podcasts provided by Cherry Becker, supporting the IIA's Internal Audit Awareness Month. I'm James Eldridge, a senior manager in the risk advisory practice at Cherry Becker. On today's podcast, I'm joined by Scott Peyton, partner and risk advisory leader. We're excited to delve into the IIA's Vision 2035 report, where it was highlighted at the recent Mid-Atlantic IIA District Conference by Anthony Pugliese, president and CEO of the IIA. This report outlines key themes and shifts in the role of internal audit as we look forward to the future. Our discussion today will focus on how these changes will impact our profession and the opportunities they present. There's a lot of enthusiasm about what lies ahead, and we look forward to an engaging conversation about the future of internal audit. This will be part one in a four-part series celebrating May's Internal Audit Awareness Month. I hope you will join us for all four sessions. Scott, thanks for joining me today on part one.
Hey, James, thanks so much. Happy to be here. Excited to support IIA's Internal Audit Awareness Month of May and talk about the Vision 2035 report with you today.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, let's get right into it. Let's talk about Vision 2035. So we obviously heard the president of the IIA discuss this concept in depth last month. So just kind of on the top, what are your thoughts on this Vision 2035 as a whole? What were some of your main takeaways from the report?
Yeah, in reading the report, one, it's a great report. If those that have not had a chance to read it, just go to the IIA's website. You can pull it down and read it for yourself. But in the report, what we found was there are two different areas. One is a series of surveys, right? So the IIA was able to poll chief audit execs and audit leaders from across the globe. And so in that, they were able to create several different surveys with really insightful metrics and perspectives on where the profession is and where it's heading. And secondly, it provided a comprehensive vision for where the internal audit profession should be headed and will be headed by the year 2035. And one of the key takeaways we had is really the evolution of internal audit becoming strategic advisors, leveraging advanced technology like AI, quantum computing, and the like to provide real-time evidence-based insights. And so with that, though, the topics that were covered really talk about that the importance of shifting the perception of internal audit, our role, how we provide value, and the rest, and really, as mentioned, harnessing those new technologies. It is part of that, though, is the necessity for increased leadership and stakeholder support of the board, the executive management and management team, really supporting the shift that internal audit is trying to take on. And from that, key insights that were revealed from the report is really looking at internal auditors adapting to the emerging risks of organizations, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then through that, of course, providing more advisory services. And so as we talk through the remaining questions, James, we'll get into each one of those topics a little more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that was, what you just mentioned right there. That was one of my biggest takeaways. Really this kind of paradigm shift between how traditionally internal audit has been kind of focused on more of a compliance and independent, focus, rather than now we're really seeing this shift going toward that of strategic advisory, and really value driving. So kind of on that, if you can expand on that a little bit more, how do you see this playing out in the industry, and what do you see as, I guess, some of the opportunities and risks that go along with this paradigm shift?
Yeah, we can't avoid the headlines we see these days, and the reason I mention that, James, is that as internal auditors, we're the eyes and ears of the organization. The board and management is relying on us to really talk about and bring light to the emerging risks of the company. And we think about how our organizations, all of us, are being influenced through the rapid pace of technology, the ever increasing complexity of business operations through things like third and fourth party reliance, cybersecurity. All these changes all these areas and things are changing dramatically and quickly. And so with that becomes a much more complex risk profile that all of our organizations are facing. So because of that, we in our role as internal auditors, we also need to change as our organizations and executive management is trying to respond to their world from an operational perspective. So as we think about that paradigm shift that you talked about, James, the first place we have to start is where are we as an internal audit team? What's our level of maturity? And you mentioned traditionally we're focused on a lot of the assurance type of services we provide, whether you're publicly traded and you're working with SOX, or you have some SOX adoption, or you just have rotational audits as a private company. It's important to understand that those basic building blocks of internal audit need to stay there, right? We always will have to have those table stakes of providing those assurance services. However, there is going to be an increased focus on providing those advisory services as well. And so along with those core SOX rotational audits, we'll need to be providing proactive advice, insights, foresight, helping our organizations anticipate and mitigate future risks. One thing that I often talk about with internal audit is we have such a unique opportunity with the purview we have as internal auditors. There are a few areas of organizations that we don't have access to, right? And that goes through operations, technology, finance, treasury, strategy, risk management. The list goes on. And if we do a good job with that as internal auditors, leaning into that strategic advisory services, leveraging technology, we can bring a truly unique and independent and insightful view, both to the executive managements and to the board.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I know, I mean, even just, speaking anecdotally, personally, we can, there really has been an increase and really in the last couple of years, but, definitely the trend kind of over the last 5 to 10 years, a lot more questions around, more strategic level, questions related to internal audit. So, have definitely felt that personally as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the technology piece. That's something that, you've kind of alluded to in, several of these different topics. And it just really seems like almost every day we're seeing new technology, increasingly advanced tech is emerging, both specifically in the internal audit space, but also just in the business environment more broadly. What are some of the more impactful technology trends that you're seeing, and what can internal auditors do to stay ahead of the curve here?
Yeah, it's finding it fascinating looking at the again all the headlines we saw with ChatGPT. I tell you that it was everywhere. Wall Street Journal, every day there were generative AI articles explaining what it was, how is it impacting it, the fear factor that many organizations looked at with Gen AI, or the excitement. So as we think about that, though, from an internal audit perspective, with where we sit, it's going to be important to be knowledgeable and embrace the use of advanced technologies if we want to become that differentiator and being a leading internal audit practice within our organizations, right? Leaning into that strategic advisor role. And so the advanced technologies, as mentioned, artificial intelligence, generative AI specifically, machine learning, data analytics, leveraging Python and some of the other more advanced tools out there is going to be critical, right? And so the one thing that I think that's important to think about when we consider moving to that strategic advisor role is executive management and operational management already has access to a lot of these tools. If we don't change to keep up with the pace of where the organization is going, as an example, operationally, if they're leveraging generative AI to help with supply chain models, or they're looking at generative AI looking for fraud detection and elimination, or cybersecurity. And if we as internal auditors don't keep pace with the technology that our operational teams are using or executive management is relying on, our ability to drive value is going to become diminished, right? And we talked a little bit about changing the perception of internal audit. If we don't embrace these technologies and move with them, we're going to continue to have a gap where we provide less and less value to the organization. So either we embrace these technology changes, we create that and move into that becoming part of the fabric of what we do every day, or again, that value that we provide is going to be diminished over time. We talked a little bit about how the 2035 report had a series of surveys, and part of the survey, 97% of the respondents believe that new technology will allow auditors to manage more complex data, while 74% affirm that AI is crucial for the profession's ideal future, right? So I think as you pull people out there, and again, this is across a lot of teams globally, so the vast majority know that technology is critical, and that AI will be part of that ideal future. I want to take a tangential for one thing, though, that I think is going to be critical for our internal audit leaders that are there, that's important to not miss, which is data, right? Embracing technology is fantastic, and we all should be thinking about how we can do that. But step one, honestly, needs to be, how do we access reliable, real-time data that we can then apply that technology to? So it's a different topic. I don't want to go into it too far. If you want to reach out and have a conversation in a sidebar, I'm happy to do that. But think about your data. Do you have access to a data lake? Are you one of the consumers, along with all other forms of management across, or not management, but other parts of the institution across the enterprise? Do you have access to that or not? So the last thing I'll mention with regard to the technology side is finding a tipping point. And what I mean by that is, and we've all been in a place where we have a new technology and we start to try it on for size. We dabble in it a little bit. We try it on this engagement or that engagement. But when I talk about the tipping point, what I'm talking about is where, as an internal audit function within our organization, we move from using things like AI or advanced machine learning or other types of more advanced technology, from being a occasional use to being how we actually operate, how we actually do business. And the question isn't where can I find an example or use case for AI, but why can I not use AI on all my engagements, right? So it is a paradigm shift, as you mentioned a little earlier, James, and I think is important for us as auditors to really consider how do we move from occasional use to really being baked into how we use advanced technology and data analytics across all of our engagements.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big ball of wax. A lot of these systems and these emerging areas. You mentioned a lot about you talk a lot about data analytics. I know one of the presenters at this conference touched on that and really mentioned how data analytics specifically is one of, if not the top area, specifically as far as technology that's being needed by organizations from an internal audit perspective, but also more specifically, needing the expertise around it. And I think that's something too, the subject matter expertise, kind of the manpower side of all of this technology. That's something that is kind of its own question as well. One thing we're seeing with associated with this rapid advancement in tech, all of these new systems and these different fields, where previously internal auditors, I think, were more considered maybe more generalists. Increasingly, we're seeing individuals needing to have more of that subject matter expertise, more of a deep knowledge set in a more narrow, system or area. How do you think that internal audit shops should approach, sourcing this subject matter expertise that they need, and obviously acknowledging that there's a cost versus benefit calculation that has to go along with that? So what are your thoughts on that? How do we kind of balance those two things?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Great question, James. And, it's a tough one, right? So when we think about the investment of time and effort around bringing in the skill sets to help take advantage of these technologies, it really turns down to a question of how do we operationalize the use of advanced technology? And this goes back to that plan, that strategic plan that I mentioned a little earlier. As an internal audit leader, it's very important to understand where are we today? What are our skill sets, and where do we want to be tomorrow? What's our North Star from an audit perspective, and how we actually deliver our audit resources and capabilities, right? And so what we often find to be successful is we think about that operationalizing the use of advanced technology. We're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight. It's going to be a step-by-step process, and one that oftentimes creates phases to get there, right? And so as a starting point, what we can often do is consider how do we invest in continuous training and development of our own people, right? Potentially you have IT auditors on your staff. Maybe they want to dip their toe in the water of leveraging generative AI and some simpler ways of going about it. That can be a great place to start. Looking at certifications, things of that nature can also be a good place to go. Second is leveraging external consultants strategically, right? So how can you take limited resources, and we all have limited budgets, but how can we take the limited budget we have and bring in the subject matter specialists, not only to perform and execute on a particular audit, maybe it's around something that it could be fraud as an example, or supply chain analysis as an example, right? But how do we leverage that group to then perform that audit, but then also train? Right? How can we create a great partnership with somebody that has knowledge around AI or machine learning or data analytics, James, as you mentioned a little earlier, to perform the audit, but also train our staff along with execution of that audit. And when I say external consultants, what I'd love for our folks to think about is not just firms similar to Cherry Bekaert, but also external to internal audit. And that can be somebody in the IT department. Maybe you have a data analytics team within your organization. Leverage them as well. Right? There's a lot of great resources that are out there where you can consider leveraging those individuals or those types of teams. Finally, the one thing I'd mention here is creating the opportunity to create a diverse team with hybrid skills. So rather than saying, here's my IT person, they do IT work, rather than that, you can say, we leverage artificial intelligence, generative AI, again, that is an example, or data analytics across all of our engagements, right? So our hybrid team is people that do business process type audits. They know how to run a Python script. They understand how the data lake is structured, right? So you don't have to have your specialists involved with everything. It'll take time, and some are more adept at technology than others, but it's something to consider around creating that hybrid team. The last thing I'll mention is developing internal expertise through a rotational program. Potentially you have somebody that is passionate about technology, and you want them to be the tip of your spear as it relates to moving into advanced analytics, right? So maybe you give them a 6-month rotation to work with the people that are part of the IT organization, for them to learn, create those relationships, and understand how to bring this back into the organization. Maybe that's phase one, is just rotating somebody out into the IT organization for them to come back and then be your champion down the road. But again, last thought is maybe those rotational programs can provide leveling up within your organization with teams within the enterprise.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting ideas and concepts. I mean, when we kind of look at the longevity of our team as a whole, kind of looking ahead to, the next generation of auditors, so to speak, what do you think that we need to be doing now to be good stewards of the profession? How do we ensure that we have not only now, but into the years into the future? How do we maintain high quality people who are ready and able to kind of carry the baton into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I'm very excited about with the 2035 vision report that the IIA has provided to us as an industry is it talks about how we can provide value back to the organization, how we can become a strategic advisor, how we can leverage advanced technologies to become much more impactful, right? So real-time, insightful, data-driven information and observations, right? So as we think about that, and we think about people coming up in their career, either people coming out of college or people that are earlier in their career, the opportunity to be part of that growth, in my estimation and experience, is something that people are going to be very excited about, right? So you want to tick and tie a sample of 25, or do you want to jump into a generative AI model and help do predictive analysis on a real-time basis around the operations of an organization? I think most of us know, you get somebody coming out of college, what they're going to be more excited about, right? And so I do think it's up to the chief audit execs and people that are in service firms to really think through, how can we create a career path, capabilities, kind of a mission within our organizations to really drive through to that North Star I keep on mentioning around having that type of an audit approach, right? And so one, I think it's having the vision. Secondly, is having a place for our younger people and even those that have been around a while to plug into developing themselves, right, through training, certifications, becoming more of that valued strategic advisor than a compliance auditor that needs to check a box. And again, that checking the box is critical. We have to keep our eye on that ball. But as we think about creating that value for people coming into the profession, I think it's a great place we can provide. The last thing I'll mention, in addition to that, is mentorships and coaching programs, right? So establishing the mentorship and coaching program is going to be critical, right? And for our newer staff or people coming out of college, for them to understand what the possibilities actually are. One thing that, as an example, I mentioned a rotational program where folks can come in and maybe do a rotation out and then come back to internal audit. Another opportunity could be through a mentorship and coaching program is that your organization could be a great way to bring in new talented folks, give them that purview that only internal audit has across the entire organization. But the plan is in 3 or 4 or 5 years after those people have had a great stint as a senior associate to move into management. Right. So think about that opportunity if you're coming out of college that you spend 3 years in internal audit. Now you understand the organization. You've met so many people and you know the path for you isn't to become a director or a vice president of internal audit, but rather to become a manager in one of the parts of the organization that you've audited or perhaps just become knowledgeable of. So I think there's a lot we can do, but it all starts with a plan. It starts with a strategy and being forward thinking and really thinking about how we as leaders in the internal audit practice and within our organizations have a plan for where we're going to go. And that plan all turns back into what the vision report talks about around becoming that strategic advisor, right? And leveraging technology.
Absolutely. Great ideas. Well, Scott, thank you so much for sharing all of this great insight and all of your knowledge here in this space. Looking ahead, we're excited to announce the next 3 parts in our series. In the upcoming episode, we're going to explore first the top 3 critical skills for the internal audit profession. After that, we'll explore empowering your business through data analytics in internal audit. And then we'll close up our 4-part series with how to audit AI. Stay tuned for these insightful discussions throughout May that will help you stay ahead in the field of risk advisory and internal audit. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to the Risk Advisory Podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to having you join us for the upcoming episodes.